Election Day. We hope you all voted and took advantage of the opportunity to vote. It is 8:32. I'm going to ask that everyone please check your cell phones and make sure that they're on vibrate or silent. And with that, we will start by having a prayer. And I think Tommy Hebert's going to lead us in our prayer this morning. Tommy?
Bow your heads with me. Dear God, we thank you again for the rain that you sent over the past 30, 45 days, the amount of water that we have been able to accumulate in our lakes and reservoirs. We do thank you for that. We thank you for life itself, and help us to live our lives such that if we say we follow you, that we act that way. Give us wisdom today in our decisions. If we disagree, help us to do so agreeably. And I pray all these things in your Son's name. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Thank you. We are very honored this morning to have the Clatworthy siblings, their mom and dad, to come forward and lead us in prayer. We have Robbie, who's in the 5th grade, JC, who's in the 3rd grade, and Ryder, who's in the 3rd grade, and they are homeschooled.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas,
One state, under God,
one and indivisible. He's the pastor. What's your
Brian, congrats on the new baby.
Congratulations, Papa.
Proclamation of November 16th is Tom Green County's 10th annual National Adoption Day. So with those folks here to celebrate that, please come forward. All children deserve a safe place to live and grow, and each year, many Texas children find a forever home thanks to adoptive families. In Tom Green County, 245 children are currently in foster care, and 52 of these children are awaiting their forever family to bring them home. For the past 18 years during the month of November, communities across the country have come together in observance of National Adoption Day to complete the adoptions of children in foster care and to celebrate the families who choose to adopt. This year, the City of San Angelo will hold its 10th annual National Adoption Day in support of those adoptive families here in our own community and thank them for opening their hearts to a child in need of a loving and permanent home. Therefore, I, Brenda Gunter, Mayor of the City of San Angelo, Texas, on behalf of the City Council, do hereby proclaim November 16, 2018 as Tom Green County's 10th Annual National Adoption Day and call on all citizens to remember during the month of November the children and families who have joined their lives through the miracle of adoption, to open their hearts and minds to the idea of opening their own homes to these children in need, and congratulate the new families to be formed on November 16, 2018 during Tom Green County's Adoption Day ceremony. I am so proud today to announce the annual National Adoption Day, as my nephew happens to be someone who's worked aggressively with foster kids, and last year had the privilege of adopting 2 of his foster kids and bring them into our family's arms. Would you like to come forward? Sure.
I do want to say thank you to the City Council for joining us again this year in celebrating National Adoption Day. This year, we're celebrating 19 children, joining 12 different families, so we're really excited about that. And it's always nice to see how the community comes together to make a day that was already going to be special for these kids just a little bit extra special for them. If you're curious about what National Adoption Day is all about, you're welcome to join us at Southland Baptist Church on November 16th. And if you have an interest in partnering with CPS or some of the agencies and volunteers that make this all possible for our children, it's a great opportunity to meet those folks. Thank you.
Come this way, let's get a picture so we need to. Now we will do a proclamation of November 2018, 2018 as National Home Care and Hospice Month. Are there folks here to help us? Home care and hospice services provide high-quality and compassionate health care services to those in need, especially during times of community or personal health care crisis. Home care and hospice services allow families to remain together in their homes for a greater length of time, as well as provide better care, dignity, and comfort in our community. Thousands of everyday heroes such as home care and hospice nurses, therapists, and aides work tirelessly to provide professional health and palliative care and compassionate support to millions of Americans in need of quality care. These dedicated home care and hospice professionals and volunteers provide a support network that continues to play a fundamental role in healthcare delivery for our nation's elderly, infirm, and disabled population. Interim Healthcare, Home Health, and Hospice, the National Association for Home Care and Hospice, and thousands of agencies across the nation have declared the month of November as National Home Care and Hospice Month and are asking all Americans to observe these occasions with appropriate ceremonies and activities. Therefore, I, Brenda Gunter, Mayor of the City of San Angelo, Texas, on behalf of the City Council, do hereby proclaim November 2018 as National Home Care and Hospice Month in San Angelo, Texas, and encourage the support and participation of all community members in learning more about home care and hospice services to better care for the elderly, disabled, and infirm as to enhance the quality of life in our community.
Hello, my name is Stacy McGuire. I'm the volunteer coordinator here at our local interim healthcare hospice office. And we would like to thank you, Madam Mayor and City Council members. We'd like to thank you, Madam Mayor and City Council members, in helping to take a look at the work that the wonderful employees for home health and hospice do. There are many agencies here in our community that take on this effort, and oftentimes that work is overlooked due to just the nature of the work that we do. So we would like to take the opportunity to invite families and other organizations to take a minute to begin to have the conversations necessary and looking forward to families that have the need for this care. And we hope that those conversations will begin as if you need education, we are there to help you with that. And you can always call our office. We do speak to other agencies to provide that information and education. And we hope and thank you for this opportunity.
girl. If I could have Brent Casey come forward, please. And he's going to make a presentation for the Texas Amateur Athletic Federation Female Athlete of the Year for the local area and region.
Thank you, Mayor. Good morning, and good morning, City Council. So, I'm Brent Casey, Recreation Manager. As she said, this is John Henry Perez. He is the what are you? Oh, yeah. Supervisor for the Recreation Department. He's also Region 10 Director for Texas Amateur Athletic Federation. So he does a great job with that. But we're here to recognize an individual that has participated through the Texas Amateur Athletic Federation since the age of 4. She's about to turn 18, I believe, and she has done an outstanding job. She is a true leader on and off the court, the field, the track, the throwing arena, anywhere that she goes. So the local Texas Amateur Athletic Federation Female Athlete of the Year is none other than Miss Anna Slate.
I'd like to say a few words real quick before we take a picture. But like I said, Hannah's been with our program for about 14 years, and also her mom helps us out there at the track. And just like Coach Gabe got an award a couple weeks ago, they don't miss a practice. They always show up. They always are committed to our programs. They help us out, and they give back to the community. And those are great people that help us out with all sports that we participate in and we offer to the community, and they've done a great job. And again, I'd like to congratulate Hannah Slate. Give me 2 more minutes real quick. We do have one more award, and it does go to Hannah, and this one is our Regional Female Athlete of the Year. Just like Mr. Casey said, everything she does, she puts her heart into. She's been at Summer Games of Texas. That is an Olympic-style event that TAP puts on, and I'm going to say for the past 10 years, maybe 8 years, give or take, she's been at every single Games of Texas, and she qualified it for at least one sport that she's participated in, or one event. So for this year, for 2018, our Regional Female Athlete of the Year goes to Hannah Slate.
At this point, we will open the floor for public comment. Issues or items that are not on the agenda may be raised by the public at this time. Citizens should speak from the podium, begin by stating their name, and limit remarks to less than 3 minutes. Council members may request that a discussed item be placed on a future agenda. The council takes public comment on all regular agenda items during the discussion of those items. Do we have anyone coming forward for public comment?
Marty Self. It's kind of nice to be on this side looking over at y'all. But no, what I'd like to do is, at a time where we hear a lot of negative things about stuff, I had a little problem with my water, and I called down to the water department and talked to Petra, and she took care of the problem. She was very precise. She did a great job. She handled it very quickly. When things go wrong, I like to complain, but when things go right, I like to give kudos. And the water department really handled this very nice and very, very great. Wasn't all to my favor, but you take your lumps. But she did a fantastic job, and I just wanted to let y'all know that people complain about the water department a lot, but they did a good job on this one. So
Thank you, Marty.
You
Appreciate
bet.
that.
Thank you.
Is there any further public comment? If there's no further public comment, we will move into our consent agenda. I'm going to start with Harry. Is there anything you want to pull off the consent agenda?
Item E and F.
E and F. Tom?
Nothing to pull.
Tommy?
No, ma'am.
Lucy?
No, ma'am.
Lane?
No, ma'am.
And Billy?
Yes, Mayor, I'd like to pull item G.
At this point in time, we will, if I could have a motion to consider all consent agenda items for approval except for items E, F, and G. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Billy, and second by Harry. Any public comment on consent agenda items? With no public comment on those consent agenda items, we will take a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
With none opposed, consent agenda approved, 7-0, with the exception of item E, F, and G. We will go to item E. Consider ratifying COSA DC's approval of a resolution authorizing COSA DC membership in the High Ground of Texas. Guy?
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Guy Andrews, Director of Economic Development. In regard to our membership in the High Ground of Texas, the main reason for being a part of that organization is the collaborative effort that affords the city of San Angelo. We have previously been a member of that organization in times past. Within that organization, which encompasses primarily the panhandle of Texas and then comes down to Midland, Odessa, and across to San Angelo, there are 10 state representatives, 3 senators that represent that area. So the collaborative voice that brings to us in bringing forth our issues and being recognized in Texas legislature are extremely important to us. They also open the door for a couple of events, national-wide events that with Southeast Manufacturers Association and a large agricultural event that allow us to get our foot in the door to attend those at a highly reduced cost. And so those are some of the advantages of being members within that organization. For some reason, San Angelo in recent years has viewed itself as a sort of a fortress, but we realize in getting our voice heard in legislation that we need to be collaborative. There are also opportunities for them as within our meetings to make it known what San Angelo has to offer. It may be that they have prospects within that region that they're not able to handle in the smaller places, that they can refer to us as well. So I'd be glad to entertain any questions that you might have.
What is that fee? Membership fee?
That is a $25,000 annual fee. It allows us to be a foundation member with a position on the board, along with the other larger cities, which would be Amarillo, Lubbock, Abilene, Midland, and Odessa. And so we're sort of conspicuously absent from that and having a voice within that particular organization. High Ground of Texas is the largest economic development regional organization within North America. And so we feel it's extremely important for us to be there and to have a representation on that.
Do I have questions from council? Harry?
But I asked to pull this, and one of the reasons I wanted it so the guy had the opportunity to be able to explain that to the citizens as we're using tax dollars to pay for this particular membership in this. I wanted them to understand the reasoning behind it and the advantages of that. So I move to approve as presented.
Second.
I have a,
Wait a minute, we're not through with questions. So Billy?
okay. Guy, excuse me. I noticed that this organization was developed in 1988, and I don't know if you have any statistical information. I watched the video, but I didn't see any statistics in there on the successes that they have had. Do they provide that so that maybe at some future council meeting you can share that with us?
Yes, I'd be happy to share that information. They do keep a record of those. I can obtain it once I'm a member of the board and be glad to share that, the successes that they've had. Primarily successes of the organization are as being a voice within the legislature. They conduct trips to Austin every year and maintain close relationships with our state legislature. So the successes won't always be in terms of did we recruit a business as a result of that, which there are many successes in regard to that. But was our voice heard and was action taken in the legislation to help promote economic development within that region?
And I also, in looking at the background information, noticed originally it seemed like we were recommending to go in at the $15,000 level, and then we changed that to the $25,000 level, and certainly wanting to be good stewards. What do we get for the $25,000 level that we wouldn't get for the $15,000 level?
At the $25,000 level, we get a board position. We become a foundation member of that organization so that we have more control about the direction that the organization moves.
Thank you.
Do we have, are our legislators on this board as well? So like Drew or Senator
The
Perry?
legislators are not on the board. The board members are industry and economic development organization primarily. The councils of government are also part of that, so that we do have elected officials that are board members.
Okay. Do I have further questions from council? If no
Mayor,
further, yes, please, Tom. Tell me.
No question. I would just say, when I served on the board, we were a member of this organization. I didn't know we'd stopped, but we were a member in the past.
Okay. Thank you for that comment. Are there any further comments on this item or further questions? If there are not, Harry made a motion to accept item E with authorizing COSA DC membership in the high ground of Texas. With a motion, is there a second? Second by Tommy. Is there any public comment on this item? With no public comment on this item, we will take a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
With none opposed, motion passes 7-0. Guy, you want to stay up here because we're going to go to item F. Consider ratifying COSA DC's approval of a resolution authorizing the COSA DC membership in the Texas Midwest Community Network.
Texas Midwest Community Network is another regional organization that we have been a member of. In fact, we've had people on that board of directors in the past. It's smaller. It takes the organization a little bit further to the east. Membership in that organization is, based on our population, is $5,000 annually, but it provides us with additional voice in the legislature, training opportunities, and representation at various trade shows within the industry. So I'll be glad to entertain questions.
Give us an example of something that they would represent us on.
Any type of economic development issue, there's a lot of movement within our legislature now to take away local rights or even to curtail some of our economic development benefits. For example, Chapter 312, which deals with tax phase-in, what used to be called tax rebates, is up. It gives us a voice in addressing those types of issues with the legislation. With a more conservative voice, there are some people that are opposed to economic development, which has been the main driver behind the expansion of the economy within Texas. And so we need to have a voice, as many voices as possible to counteract that type of activity.
Do I have questions from council or comments?
Move to approve as presented.
With a motion to move, is there a second? With that, is there any public comment on the item authorizing COSA-DC membership in the Texas Midwest Community Network? With no public comment, we will take a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
With none opposed, motion passes 7-0. Now, the last item is G. Consider ratifying COSA-DC's approval of a resolution authorizing the board president to negotiate and execute a second amendment to a lease agreement with Angelo State University for office space in the Business Resource Center, a memorandum of understanding providing for an adjustment in rent and assumption by ASU and the Small Business Development Center of marketing, recruitment, and related services for the Business Factory Incubator Program. Guy?
Thank you. As you're aware, the Business Resource Center is owned by the City of San Angelo Development Corporation, and we determine what those lease agreements are. This particular lease agreement we think is a very collaborative effort and a win-win situation in that the Small Business Development Center, ASU, would market our business incubator and provide staffing for that to provide assistance. One of the main benefits of this is that we would provide students within ASU opportunities for employment. In exchange, what this does is it reduces our lease agreement with them in a cooperative effort to where we're no longer receiving a lease payment that goes to support the master's candidates that'll be doing that operation. And in exchange, we would come up with we would have a $10 a year lease agreement with them. But again, we think it's a win-win. Also have Dave Erickson here with the Small Business Development Center if you have additional questions.
Billy, I think you wanted this pulled. Do you have some questions or comments?
Yes, and I agree with you, Guy. I think it is a win-win situation, that collaboration. My question is around reducing the rental amount from over $13,000 to $10, and I just wanted to understand a little bit more about why such a huge reduction.
Well, the reduction is actually a trade-off, and so rather than us charging for that, what we're doing is making basically a contribution that would allow them to have the funds to hire the two master students to operate that center. So it's really a sort of a transfer of those funds.
Describe the masters. Yeah.
Right.
Go.
So the two master students, in the past, we would have had to pay for them to support this effort, or I'm not clear on that, I'm sorry.
In the past, we did not have the master students involved in that. ASU would have paid them to do that. So rather than them paying us a lease agreement, they're paying for the master students, which we feel is a good use of economic development funds.
Thank you.
Again, describe what the master students do.
They will assist the people in the business incubator. They'll be involved in the marketing efforts since so many of these people actually come through the SBDC program and then are looking for space in order to incubate, start their business. They would consult with them and provide that type of support. We would still be involved from the standpoint of administration of the lease agreements and that sort of thing, which is sort of the administrative side of it. But actually helping the businesses develop is what they'll be doing in that program.
So in that case, does that mean that every 6 months you would have two different master students, or every year you would have two masters? How do you keep the continuity? I think Dave would like to come forward and maybe educate us a little more.
Let Dave address that. Dave, thank you.
Dave Erickson, Director of the Small Business Development Center. Thank you, Guy, for explaining it so well. the master's students are here as long as they're in the master's program, the MBA program in the College of Business. So that could be a year or 2 years. And so it's not long-term, but it's not real short-term either. It is tremendous service learning opportunities for them. And it's great partnership with ASU. ASU, 2 graduate students cost about $21,000. So that's what it costs ASU to supply us 2 graduate students. We've always had 2 graduate students from ASU, but they've been on the training side. These 2 graduate students will be fully dedicated solely to the Business Resource Center in the Business Factory Business Incubator, and to market, recruit, brand, and help us provide the business development services for the incubator clients, which we've always done ever since the incubator started. And as many of you know, we had a big hand in starting the incubator in 2004.
So would that mean that they would solely be responsible for that, or who's the leadership and
I would be
sure
the,
that
right,
there's
good question. That would be the leader of that, along with the other business advisors, but they would work under our wing and provide a lot of that help in marketing and recruitment, orientation to the business incubator, but again, under our wing totally. Yeah. And we have a great working relationship with Nora and Guy and Bob and Shannon. And it's a collaborative effort for sure. And they're great to work with. Couldn't ask for better partners in that. So, I just say what a great partnership for the benefit of the community and economic development. And a lot of these people have created tremendous businesses in the past. So.
Billy, do you have further questions?
No, I was just going to comment because I'm personally familiar with a couple of businesses that have gone through that, and they're very successful in San Angelo. So, I'm just excited that we are having those kinds of successes for San Angelo.
Do I have further questions or comments from anyone else on council?
Well, this really isn't about Small Business Development Center. I have worked personally when I started my own business with Dave and the folks at SBDC. It is an amazing organization. Billy, you are correct. They do good work. It's a great partnership for the city. It's a great partnership for the community to have Dave and his folks working on behalf of economic development. So, Dave, thanks for all that you do.
Perfect. So may I have a motion, please?
I make a motion that we approve item G.
Second.
With a motion and a second on the floor, do I have any further additional comments or questions from the audience? With none, we will take a vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
With none opposed, motion passes 7-0. Thank you both.
Thank you.
Thank you.
With that, we will move into our regular agenda for the day. And item A is consider selecting Allstate Insurance Company at the COSA Group Volunteer Employee Benefits Program provider. And we have Julie Rickman from Holmes Murphy by Human Resources Director Brian Kendrick.
Good morning, Mayor, Council. I'm just here to introduce Julie Rickman. She is with our consultant group, Holmes Murphy.
Good morning, council members and mayor. Again, I am Julie Rickman with Holmes Murphy. We are the consultant for the city of San Angelo and work with employee benefits. And so today we're going to talk about the idea of changing to Allstate for our voluntary benefits. So the city of San Angelo has offered individual voluntary benefits for a number of years through AFLAC. And we haven't really marketed that product in a long time. And so we wanted to go through and make sure we were doing due diligence for your members, for your employees. We noticed that individual benefits are generally more expensive than group benefits. The city has no access to the contracts, meaning that as an individual contract, when your employees buy benefits, your human resources folks don't have access to what those benefits truly are. And there's no ability to control the benefit offerings. So what we did was we marketed the benefits to ensure that the right products were in place with the most beneficial costs to your employees. We wanted to look at all the benefits, and so we looked at group and individual benefits. We looked at on and off job accident coverage, standalone cancer products, critical illness with cancer riders that are added to them, hospital indemnity insurance, which is basically they pay a benefit when you go into a hospital, and we actually evaluated pet insurance as well during this process. So we marketed voluntary benefits, and that marketing was completed in September 14th of this year. We had responses from 12 different benefits, or vendors offering to provide voluntary benefits, and narrowed down that field to 3 finalists. They were narrowed by the product mix that they offered, the cost of the benefits and services, and just really the reputation of those organizations. We performed finalist meetings through Human Resources and Human Resource staff and Holmes Murphy on October the 9th. Based on the finalist meetings that we had, there was a unanimous decision to move to all state benefits. And we were looking to offer 2 group products at this point, an accident and a critical illness product with a cancer rider, looking for opportunities to partner for additional products, adding in subsequent years if we were looking to add additional products for members. And then individuals with products currently with the AFLAC can maintain those with direct billing through AFLAC so they wouldn't lose the coverage by stopping payroll deductions and doing the AFLAC products. Okay. Any questions at this time?
Yeah, I'm not sure what my question is, but so we are changing the company of which
in which we offer,
Insurance.
yeah, we have individual voluntary products in place right now. We are changing the organization or the company that we're looking for to offer those products through. And a big portion of that was the affordability for your members. So you have about 100 and I believe 13 members currently on your plan that are using voluntary benefits. Normally when you have those types of products, about 30% of your population will need those products. The affordability of those, when we looked at the all-state benefits, was such that more of your members would have access to be able to purchase individual products or group products in this case. And the products that we're looking at are an accident plan, and what that does is in the case of an accident, you've probably seen commercials where it says, in the case of an accident, we pay you money. It's the exact type of product as that. So in the case of an accident, let's say you have an ambulance ride and then you're going to the hospital. It pays you dollars based on the type of accident that you've had. The other one is a critical illness product, and what that does is pays you a lump sum benefit upon diagnosis of a critical illness, and then individuals can offer or actually add on a cancer rider, which pays you a lump sum benefit if you're diagnosed with cancer.
So what we have today is, quote, the city's health insurance, and then this is something individuals can purchase over and above the city health.
Correct. These are supplemental benefits to help folks that might need additional coverages. So again, the idea of these are more income replacement. So let's say you've been diagnosed with a critical illness, so you've had a heart attack. Your costs, your medical insurance is going to cover a big portion of that, but you also have additional costs, so your deductibles, your co-pays, your out-of-pocket maximum on your plan. So these products are designed to layer onto your medical plan in case someone needs something additional to cover basically their income.
And we've not done this before, or?
We have not marketed these types of benefits for a number of years. This doesn't normally fall under the standard marketing RFP process because it's voluntary and there's no city funding that goes into it. It's completely employee funded. And so because it hadn't been marketed in a number of years, we felt that it was, again, the due diligence of us and Human Resources to go back through and say, hey, does it make sense to move? Are we good where we're at? Is there enough access to employees to these benefits based on their incomes? Are they able to afford the benefits?
There's no additional staff or staff costs for this program?
There would be no additional staff or staff costs for this program. Basically, the big piece component of that would be payroll deductions, and so that would be working with payroll and human resources to adjust the payroll deductions for the new products.
Okay. I have asked some questions. Do I have questions from, okay, Tommy?
I have a couple, Mayor. Julie, you mentioned specifically the accident and the critical illness. Can you give us some highlights of how the current products being offered and how the ones proposed to be offered compare just from a high level on the benefit to benefit comparison?
Yeah, as far as the apples to apples comparison, these products are not exactly the same when it comes to what we're offering. So we're looking at group products versus individual products, so the coverage levels are different when you look at it. So for example, on an accident plan, one plan may be $150 for an ambulance benefit, the other plan may be $100 for an ambulance benefit, but if the cost of the plan itself is 40% higher, then the affordability for employees is they're not going to purchase the accident product at all. The cancer product is probably the biggest one that's going to be a difference. Right now, what you have is a standalone cancer policy, which is it pays you based on the treatments that you're receiving. So for example, you go in for chemotherapy, you go in for a doctor's visit, it pays you a benefit based on the types of services that you're receiving. The one that we're proposing at this time is a critical illness with a cancer rider, and it just pays you a lump sum upon diagnosis of the product, or upon diagnosis of the critical illness or cancer. So it'll be a $10,000 benefit just paid, you're diagnosed, here's your $10,000, use it how you will, and it's not going to be that indemnity product where they're submitting receipts for coverages. Now, at this point, anyone that currently has a cancer product will be able to port that and take that with them and do direct withdrawals out of their checking accounts and keep that product with them. And we find that if we have interest next year to add an additional cancer product, we're happy to reevaluate at that point in time. But for the purposes of adding in 2 new products, it's a lot of learning experience for employees. And again, the idea behind this was affordability for your members and trying to find the right mix. And we felt that offering 3 different products or 4 different products was a lot for folks to take in and maybe narrow down that field a little bit to something that was a little bit, again, more affordable and accessible for members.
It is for the council to understand, these are really quite different products. So it's not, we're not able to make an apples to apples comparison with these products. The affordability is no doubt there. So just so we understand, we're not going to be offering that which we have in the past, but it is something that it could likely be more accessible to the people. One question I do have is, could we not continue to offer the AFLAC product, since it is a totally individual product and let's just say a standalone alongside this, and let the employees have the choice, since this has no taxpayer funding to it?
I think our chief concern there is meeting the participation requirements with Allstate and the confusion that it would bring to city employees. Obviously, like we said, if you already have a policy with AFLAC, you can it's portable. They can keep that. Nobody's going to lose any coverage over this. But when we were talking about apples and apples yesterday, I made the analogy that really it's apples or nothing. I mean, for many of our employees, for about 21% of our employees make less than $30,000 a year. The expendable income at that level is just not very much. And so when you're looking through and you say, I've got kids, I need this dental insurance, I need this vision insurance, what else can I afford? Cancer, critical illness, those kind of things have been left out of the mix when you're at that level of salary. But that's important. If something tragic like a heart attack or a diagnosis of cancer happens, you're going to need help paying those medical bills. And so our concern was not having an apples to apples, because as it is within the individual product, they can still seek out higher levels of coverage. But as a city, we wanted to make it accessible as possible to all of our employees. And so really it's apples or nothing. I would like the big juicy apple over there, but I can afford this apple here or nothing, So that's really the analogy that I was making related to this offering.
Okay, thank you. Do I have further questions or Tommy?
Well, I was just going to say, I don't know how this vote's going to go, but I am not against Allstate, but I am in favor of keeping the AFLAC, since it is a totally different coverage and options available. So I will say that up front.
And they said they can keep AFLAC programs.
They can keep it, but they can't purchase it as, let's say, even though it's not a group, then they would have to seek out the coverage elsewhere and not have the ability to have it deducted from their paycheck.
Correct. They would be able to go into the individual market and pull an AFLAC policy if they were looking to add an AFLAC policy. When it comes to complexity, there's a couple pieces with that, with payroll deductions and having, again, the confusion of having a couple different carriers offering benefits. Both of them have accident policies. One of them is 30% more expensive. Which one do I go with? But the other piece is carriers for a group your size, which you have a substantial population, but when they look at that, they generally don't like to have additional folks coming in and offering the same product. It's the same thing with your
That makes sense.
your medical insurance. You're not going to offer Aetna and Blue Cross. You just don't have a big enough population to be able to offer two carriers side by side.
And just to add, some more numbers into it, right now we have 869 eligible employees for this sort of product, and 48 of them have a cancer policy. And, you got to believe that if it was more affordable, we'd have a much larger group with some sort of critical illness and cancer component.
Any other further questions or comments from council? Billy?
I just have excuse me, a really basic question. I know that Holmes and Murphy was involved in the marketing and gathering all the information. What other services are you directly involved with the city employees?
We work with your medical insurance and the contracts that you currently have through community. We work with your dental, your vision coverage, your disability and life insurance policies. So we are directly involved with all of your employee benefits.
Thank you.
No further questions or comments. Do I have a motion on the floor to accept Allstate Insurance Company? I make a motion to accept the Allstate Insurance Company as presented. Is there a second? Lucy seconds it. Is there any public comment? No public comment. We will take a vote. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
Nay.
Nay.
Motion passes 5-2.
Thank you.
Item B, consider awarding RFB ES-08-18 West Concho Avenue improvement to Reese Albert Incorporated contingent upon TxDOT approval in the sum of $1,760,481.61 for street reconstruction, sidewalk and ADA accessibility, traffic signals, utility construction, and drainage modifications between South Randolph Street and US 87, South Coningheim Street, being a project funded with federal, state, and local monies, and authorizing the city manager to negotiate and execute said contract. Russell Pell, you're on.
Morning. West Concho widening is a one block project extending from US Highway 87 to Randolph Street between the YMCA and the First Financial Building. The project will include widening the street 15 feet towards the YMCA building, and we'll be removing and replacing the existing concrete, going back with new concrete. Like our other capital improvement projects, we'll be replacing the water mains underneath Concho Avenue, and there are no existing sewer mains under there, so we don't have those to replace. Because we are moving towards the YMCA, there's an existing sidewalk on the south side of Concho, and we'll be going back with a new sidewalk, and the alignment for the new sidewalk will accommodate for future landscaping and irrigation for a future gateway project. Because this project does extend into Highway 87, it requires TxDOT coordination. What we'll be doing is replacing the existing traffic signals at that intersection, as well as the drainage structures that are underneath Highway 87 there. The original construction costs, or the original estimated construction costs, were approximately $1.3 million, of which approximately $185,000 of that was TxDOT's estimated contributions.
That said 384,000.
What did I say? 385.
You said 150 some thousand.
I'm sorry. Approximately 385,000 is what I meant to say. All right. So this next slide kind of shows us what the project will look like once it's completed. We'll have two interior lanes that'll have or handle the direct traffic east and west. The two exterior lanes will be right turn only lanes, much like our street one block to the north, Tuig. We'll have 2 crosswalks at Highway 87 and Randolph Avenue, and along the south side here is the proposed sidewalk. All right. So we originally advertised the project back in August, and we received no bids. When we had that advertisement out, we re-advertised in October, and we received only 1 bid from Reese Albert Construction in the sum of $1.676 million, or approximately. Our anticipated funding for this project, TxDOT will fund approximately $600,000. The water fund will fund approximately $340,000. The street bond fund is $822,000 approximately, with the total project cost, including a contingency, coming out to be $1.67 million. 76 million, sorry.
The numbers are tough today.
Yeah. All right, so with that, staff recommends awarding this contract to Reese Albert Construction contingent upon TxDOT's approval. We've been talking to TxDOT. The reason we had to put that wording in there was because of the funding and the overestimated costs, they came in higher than what we had estimated, and we anticipating getting written approval from Austin sometime in the next week or 2.
With that, Harry, would you like to start?
Well, I've got a comment, and I'm going to take a citizen's approach to this, even though we've got a business in town that has bid on this thing. We seem to have a constant on this. We only have one contractor that bids on these road projects, and they consistently come in higher than what our estimates are. And I guess I make that comment because this has to be done. It's in my particular district, has been a project of the mayor's for a long period of time, but we're also utilizing taxpayers' dollars to do this. So I don't know if there's a solution to this, and maybe one of the citizens out there that are listening to this may have some input sometime in the future. But we really, really need to see if there's a way that other contractors will bid on these projects. And I'm just concerned that every time we do a street project, we only have one bidder, and they come in higher than what we estimate.
Here's the big problem. Kill economic development, don't have any growth, don't keep the construction people busy, and you'll have more competitors. Right now, the industry is very busy. Everyone is backed up. You have fuel costs, which means costs come in higher because of product. You know, the good news is the economy is good. The good news is people are busy. Good news is there's lots of projects out there. Unfortunately, there's some negatives that come with it.
It just takes taxpayers' dollars to do it.
Thank you. Do I have further questions or comments? Lane, would you like to add?
What was your original budget? What did we
Original budget or estimated costs were the $1.288 million that I'd shown earlier.
When was that number done?
8 months ago.
Yeah.
8 months ago?
Uh-huh.
Okay. Price of materials has gone up in that 8 months, but is that relevant to that substantial
amount? I don't have that number in front of me.
What were we basing that 1.2 off of? Were we looking at a particular project that we've done in the past and applying those numbers to it?
Right. Typically, we use our previous projects and statewide averages to get those costs.
And I think you have said that the additional costs are primarily on the TxDOT side, not on the city side.
Yeah, well, I did mention that, but yes, I have. That is what we found. You know, the traffic signals. You know, there's a big lead time on those, and the majority of the extended costs are on the TxDOT side.
Okay, so it's not more of the road construction; it's the signaling, it's the sidewalk.
There's drainage.
There is a backlog and shortage of material. You know, the cost of steel to construct the mast arms for the traffic signals has gone up.
Steel has tripled.
Right.
So there are those factors that are hard to anticipate.
Do you know an average cost of a signal like that?
Typical
What
intersection is about $220,000 to $250,000 per intersection.
Do I have any further? Yes, Tom?
Russell, we're looking at this, and it's gone up roughly 30%. I'm cool with spending 1.7, but I don't want to spend any more. Can we put a limit on this? Can we cap it? I was going to say, we have a very finite budget that we're trying to work under. I have no problem, and I see the need for this, the necessity here, but I want to freeze it right there. I don't want somebody to come back in 20, 30% more just because they know it's there. I don't want to see that.
Right. So we do have a built-in contingency into this project just for unanticipated construction efforts. The problem that I see with putting a cap on it is if we do go over that, is that, or if we do run into something that we didn't anticipate, that we're limiting ourselves. Per the state law, we can technically go up to 25% over the original bid amount without having to rebid the project. So if we put that do not exceed number on there, we do kind of put
some
more
handcuffs you don't want.
limitations. Do what?
You'll get some handcuffs you're not looking for, but
Correct.
I mean, what's the odds of us hit something we're not prepared for here?
I think it's pretty hard to say. Go ahead, Teresa.
Thank you. I just want to add that because of the value of this contract, 25% is going to be more than $50,000. So any change order is going to probably come back to you anyway, and you can make a decision at that time on whether or not you want to approve those additional funds. So even though we don't cap it, you will still have some say on whether or not the additional work is something you want to do and pay for.
Leave it to Teresa to squash.
Yeah, no,
Go ahead.
Teresa.
Good point.
Do
I'm
I,
good.
do I have further? Yes,
I just have
Lizzie?
a question. When is this supposed to start if we do approve it?
Well, like I said, we still have to get TxDOT approval, and we can't give a notice to proceed until we get that. I anticipate a notice to proceed to be, sometime around the end of the year to the first of the year.
But not before Christmas.
Yeah, most likely not before Christmas.
Not in February.
There you go. Got some, parameters here.
What's in February?
Well, right, but so just to give you kind of an idea on the
Valentine's
schedule.
Day.
Yeah, there you go, man.
It is going to be a while before the project does actually begin because there is such a lead time on getting the mast arms for the traffic signals constructed. And, that was one comment that Reese Albert had brought up, was that it takes approximately anywhere from 16 months to get those mast arms delivered. So, and that was basically the entire length of their contract for this project, so that they asked that we work with them on that. So it's going to be a while before we get started.
Harry, you wanted to make a comment?
Well, I guess since Lucy asked the question of when we're going to start, we're having this discussion, and we're already pushing it out 6 more months from where we are today. The original bid here at $1.3 million was done 7 or 8 months ago. Are we going to have another 25 to 30% increase in cost simply because we've pushed the start date out 6 months?
No, once we order the material, it's the cost that we get today.
Under contract.
Under contract, correct.
So help me understand order to proceed and making the buy of the material. What do we have to have the order to proceed before we can buy material?
No, we have to have a signed contract before we can order the material.
Okay.
With that, may I have a motion on the floor to accept the sum of $1,764,081.61 for street reconstruction on Concho Avenue and 87? With that, any public comment?
Who made the motion?
I guess I did.
I think you did.
I think
I read
it sounded to me like you did.
Do I have a motion?
Motion, I guess.
It was good.
Second by Harry. Any public comment? No public comment. We'll take a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Item C, consider resolution authorizing the mayor to execute a first amended interlocal agreement with Tom Green County relating to development of the new county jail facility located in northeast San Angelo, providing for construction, permitting, and inspection fees, and allowing the county to petition for re-annexation. John?
Thank you. John James, Director of Planning and Development Services. This is an item you may recall from a little while back. The county had asked to de-annex or disannex property from the city limits related to a grant project that they were looking at. As part of that original agreement, the city agreed not to re-annex them for a period of 5 years. Since the county did not receive that grant, they no longer need that 5-year period and are considering asking to be re-annexed sooner. However, in order to accommodate that, we would have to amend our agreement because, again, right now our hands are tied. Even if they want to come back in the city, we cannot annex them for 5 years without amending this agreement. So that's the primary change to this. The other major piece to this revised agreement would be a reduction in building permit fees for the jail project. The calculated fees, I believe, are about $150,000. This would reduce that by half. Some of the reasons for that, jails are very unique facilities, and as we estimated the number of inspections and the things we would inspect, we could not justify that level of fee. Again, just because of the unique nature of a jail. Many of the things that go into the construction of a jail are governed by the Texas Jail Commission standards, and we don't even inspect as our inspectors. So this is very different than a normal commercial project in that we would be doing fewer inspections than normal and not inspecting things that we would otherwise normally inspect. So we're comfortable recommending that reduced fee for this case.
Bringing them back into the city with reannexation, are there additional costs, sewer, water, or utilities that the city would experience by doing this?
No, part of the original agreement was that we would continue to serve them with city water and sewer even outside the city limits, so they're already connected to our system. In fact, they would be paying the outside the city rate for water and sewer currently. So when they come back in the city, that their rate would go back down a little bit, but there would be no additional costs to the city.
Okay, do I have a question, Billy? It looks like you have one.
I do. What does it benefit the county to be reannexed into the city? There has to be a benefit, or they would just leave things the way they are.
You know, honestly, I would probably defer that question to them. I mean, there are always advantages to being inside the city limits from all of the services that we provide. Police and fire services that would,
first responder services.
Right. Okay. Those kinds of services that we would typically not provide outside the city limits. Again, that land has always been, or in recent years has always been in the city limits. The only reason they wanted to de-annex from the city is to qualify for this grant application. So basically they want to return to the status quo and come back in the city limits.
You know, it sounds like when we made the agreement, they were pretty confident that they were going to get approval for that grant. Did they share in why they were not approved?
I guess I wouldn't say that they were confident. They felt like they had a good grant application, but it was a competitive grant with other communities, but I have not heard from them why they think they may not have gotten it.
Just curious.
Do I have, yes, Tommy?
A couple of questions, John. Is the city going to have some expense if we lower our fees as they request? Are we going to have some expense that we must incur as a result of, even though we're not inspecting, that we may have to pay for relative to those things?
No, I'm not aware. The only costs that we have associated with permit review and inspection, which we are, by the way, doing already, part of the agreement was that we would continue to permit the building as if it was in the city limits, so we're already doing that. The only expense is really the staff time to go out and do the inspections, review the plans. Plan review's already been done, in fact, and now it's under construction, and so it would be the inspection process. But that's already being done. Again, the only cost would be staff time.
So help me understand, we estimated initially, did they know up front that it was going to be $150,000? So why are we willing now to say half of that's okay? I'm a little
Well, from before they even started the project, they came to us with this discussion, and so we had gone back and forth with them on some discussions on what that fee should be. Again, our standard fees are based on things like building square footage and value and all of that. But as we discussed with them on this particular facility, our building official at the time did an analysis of how many things would be inspected, how many inspections that would involve, and based on our hourly rate for inspectors, we just couldn't justify that $150,000.
So you're still good with, you can still cover your costs with the $75,000?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
John, does
Yes,
county,
Tom?
Does the county have a big savings here by coming back in? And I think we've danced around this, but I'm just looking for, is somebody getting a big savings or increase one way or the other?
No, I mean, I'm not aware. Obviously, they don't pay any property taxes or anything like that. So that's the normal thing that a property owner would look at in terms of being outside or inside the city. There's, you pay more taxes inside the city, but you get a lot more benefits. But
Now they're going to come inside the city and they're going to get all those benefits, but it's non-taxable.
Well, but again, a lot of those, that's right, but a lot of those benefits that
Agreed to up front.
A citizen, for example, enjoys the city parks and other things like that. I mean, obviously, a jail facility is not going to benefit from those things.
They really only requested it because they were trying to get those additional grant dollars. And keep in mind, the city also partners with the county in regard to jail facilities. So.
But as mentioned before, by being brought back into the city, the first responders, because they're now in city limits, how different is that than if they were not part of the city, and how would the first responders react, and what expense would there be different by the nature they're no longer in the county? I mean, in the city limits.
I guess I don't have an answer to that. I would defer that to police and fire, and I don't know what those impacts would be necessarily.
Because it's, with the jail having been very close to our downtown area and very convenient for our police officers and our fire, it's a very easy facility to support. They're now, I'm not going to say way out of the city, because obviously we're looking to have them in the city, but the distance and the costs changed dramatically from the previous locations. So the question would be, how much more expensive is it for our first responders to now provide those services? Do I have anybody from fire? I thought I saw Brian Dunn here earlier. And I guess the question then would also be, if we didn't annex them back into the city, would our fire and police still provide first responder services? Or would it be left to the David Jones, the sheriff, and who would provide fire services if they are not in the city limits?
Chief? Nice tie.
I'm sorry, I was out in the lobby. Can you repeat your question?
The question is, being in the city, the amount of dollars, time and effort, et cetera, to support the jail, and with them being, if we didn't annex them back in and they were in the county or even in the city, they're further out than they would have been, what additional expenses do we have for first responders based off of their new location versus their old? And if we didn't annex them in, would our first responders, fire and police, still be there to support them?
Okay, currently, fire trucks do not go outside the city limits unless called for a mutual aid. The ambulances run county-wide. In the past, we had an industrial contract with out there where UPS and that stuff is right now. We had this discussion with them when they chose to go outside that deal, and the way the dispatch system works, because they're out in the county, unless they're specifically added, the volunteer department would be dispatched for fire service there.
So now we would be obligated, first responders, to provide those services at whatever cost.
If it's inside the city limits, Chief. So basically, we annex them
If
back.
it's inside the city
Correct,
limits, yes.
Do I have any further comments? Billy, it looks like you're coming up with a thought. I see it formulating.
I know you said this, but it didn't quite compute. If the jail is outside of the city limits, what's the obligation of the fire and EMTs?
Well, EMS, we run countywide, so anywhere in Tom Green County, the ambulances are going to go, which is primarily what we do when we're going to the jail now. We're going over there to take somebody to the hospital. The fire side, we stop at the city limits, and the outside the city limits to the rest of the county line is covered by volunteers because of the way it's set up in the dispatch system. Now, you could form an agreement with the county if that's council's choice or however that's been done in the past with several other outside entities. But until that is done, outside the county would be primarily served by a volunteer fire.
And to the mayor's point earlier, and maybe you said this and I wasn't paying attention, but right now, the county jail is, a lot closer than it will be when it's going, further out. So there would be additional cost associated with the EMS, right? If travel further?
It's further than it is from Central, because right now it's at, I'm not sure what the address is, 220.
2 blocks or something.
Yeah, it's 2 blocks from Central Fire Station. It's not, it's a little bit farther. Station 3 out there has an ambulance and a fire truck that's probably, from where their current location would be, is probably 1.5 miles, 2 miles from that, well within our normal range of operating if you consider where the stations are located throughout the city. So it's not out of the ordinary for us.
Okay, all right. So what I hear you saying, basically, there would not be a lot of additional added cost.
And on the EMS side, it's billed, there's a per mile charge in there too. So that's covered for transporting back to the hospitals on that side. And then on the fire side, if they were back within the city limits, that's just the normal operating range for us. And it's not like they normally have a lot of calls. They're building this jail, should be built quite well and to the new state standards. So
When we talk about annexation, obviously the jail is the conversation, but what other properties would have been de-annexed when we de-annexed the jail? Were there other properties being developed or other things being developed in that area at any way?
I can.
Go ahead, Tom.
This is John's question.
John, there's the 4-H shooting sports range, and it was right where the jail is. So they stomped on it, put the jail there. So they've moved 300 yards down the field, but there's a property line that runs right down there that we can throw a rock across. Does the annexation of this property exclude the 4-H? I mean, if we were to have an accident out there at the 4-H range, but EMS goes anyway, it's not a concern. But there's a property line that goes right through there.
Well, to answer the first question, the only property that was disannexed was the county-owned property, so it did not include any other private property. And the other thing I wanted to clarify was today you're not voting on annexing this property at all. This just changes the agreement to allow for that in less than 5 years. Any petition for annexation from the county would come to you. We would bring you a service plan analysis of what impacts there would be, both pros and cons, and you could make a decision at that point whether or not it made sense to re-annex. So this is just amending the agreement to allow you to even consider it in the future.
My question.
Yeah, I think that does.
answers the
What was that to
Clarifies.
begin with, John?
And one more thing I want to correct. I said earlier that moving outside the city limits, then they now pay a higher rate for water and sewer. Part of that original agreement allowed them to continue to pay the in-city rate for water and sewer. So this won't affect sewer and water revenues or expenses at all either way.
They would have consumed a lot of water and a lot of sewer, right? One way or the other. It's a big
Well,
jail.
Yeah, at this point, no, but yeah, once it opens, obviously I'm sure they use water and sewer quite a bit.
Well, it's a much bigger facility. Do we have any projections on the cost and expense of the water and sewer if we're going to leave it one way versus the other way?
Again, under the current agreement, they're treated as if they're in the city limits for the
Yeah,
purposes of
no
water and
difference.
sewer. So as far as what we're talking about today, it won't make any difference one way or the other.
All right, I don't want to read this item again because it might be assumed I am making the motion. So I am going to leave it to someone here on council to make a motion.
I make a motion.
Okay, Billy,
I'll
thank you for
second.
that. And Tommy has made a second. With that, do we have any public comment? With no public comment, we will take a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? With none opposed, motion passes 7-0. Item D, consider resolution allowing the city manager or his designee to negotiate and execute a contract with the Chamber of Commerce Convention Visitors Bureau allocating hotel occupancy tax funds and to set an absolute dollar amount for contributions of hot funds to the City of San Angelo Civic Events Division.
Good morning, Mayor, Council,
Morning.
Mr. Valenzuela. This is a new clicker, so I'm trying to figure out how to do it. Oh, there we go. Sorry. Okay. So I'm going to start out with the changes to the Convention and Visitors Bureau contract. There are no changes to the monetary allocation. This is really more of a housekeeping item. The Chamber came to us asking that we change the ending date of the contract from September 30 to December 31st, and that's more to facilitate their budget process and getting us the information that we need to evaluate the contract at year end. It also clarifies the language that addresses the calculation of any unspent funds that should be remitted back to the city at year's end. And with that, in that contract, there is a requirement that we, as the city, evaluate what was spent every year with these funds and how it was used. And so anything that was left over above and beyond that amount that was allocated is required to be remitted back to the city every year.
All right, so I'm a little confused why, because September 30th is our year end.
Right, and we were running into some issues with, again, calculating the amount that needs to come back to the city. And so we met with Bruce and Diane from the Chamber and the CVB and with their auditors as well, and decided that if we change the contract end date to their year end, then we could have the audited financial statements in order to calculate that amount, and that just makes more sense. It's a lot clearer that way.
But then because our hot tax funds also end September 30th, and we start a new year with them October 1st.
Yes, ma'am. And
It
so
gets a little complicated, doesn't it?
Well, if they wanted to request a different amount to begin on, say, January 1st of the following year, we would just have to have those discussions during our budget process so that we allocated the appropriate amount for that first 3 months and then the remaining 9 months of the contract.
Review the dollars right now in that contract.
The city remits $865,000 to help support the CVB.
What percent is that to the hot tax funds received this year?
So for the end of 2018, we received just under $2.5 million. So it's about a third, I guess.
One of the discussions that we've had over the budget conversation was the idea that we relook at the hot funds allocations as it related, because some are dollars, some are percentages, some benefit from over and above receipts of hot tax funds, and we were hoping to come up with a consistent philosophy and strategy for those funds.
Yes, ma'am. And in fact,
Go
I'm
ahead.
sorry.
Go ahead, and then I'll make my.
The other part of this resolution that we're bringing to you today is a proposal to limit the civic events allocation to a flat dollar amount, because as you just said, you hadn't mentioned that during the budget process, and so we were bringing a proposal to you today for consideration for that.
And
the only other percentage-based allocation that comes from hot funds is SACAC, San Angelo Cultural Affairs Council, and they're right now at a 5% basis. We did look at that and evaluate whether it was a good time to bring them back. Their contract right now doesn't end until the end of 2020, and so we thought maybe we would bring that one back a little later after we've had time to evaluate it more.
I'd also add on the civic events component, that did go to their board, and their board, while they're not opposed or in favor of it, they asked for that portion on the civic events part to be tabled to allow them a little more time to study it and see what it is. So that was the recommendation coming from that board.
I think the most important statement to make, I know, Harry, you have a comment or a question, so just a moment and I'll get to you, is that if you take a look at what hot funds conceptually were created to do, was very much about putting heads in beds. And the philosophy would be that the Convention Visitors Bureau primarily, its responsibility is heads in beds. So it would appear that they get penalized because it is a set dollar amount, where others benefit because they get a percentage. And it would also be said that the Convention Visitors Bureau is the largest group to put heads in beds. And yet they don't benefit like the other organizations do by increased hot funds. And so there doesn't seem to be correct analysis of who we do what with and whatever for based off of what these organizations do. Harry?
I have to agree with you, Mayor. I always thought that when we moved away from a percentage for the Convention and Visitors Bureau, that we should do like for civic events and the Cultural Affairs Council. I mean, when you take a look at what Cultural Affairs Council does, now they get 5% on that thing, that's a lot of money, a lot more money than they've ever gotten during that time frame. So we need to get to a spot where everybody has a finite amount, or we need to move back to everybody gets a percentage. However we want to do that, but everybody's got to be on the same page.
Yeah, I think that's generally the thought process. So again, making sure everybody's efforts, that no one feels like they're, quote, being punished, because this conversation is not about punishing anybody for their work, their efforts, and the end results. But we do know the fact that the Convention Visitors Bureau does a lot to promote this city, of which all organizations benefit from. And so limiting their ability when others are not does not make sense.
I think this group really probably should get some additional education as to where those hot funds are out there. I mean, so that the people that are watching this can see this up on the screen. I mean, there's $50,000 goes to the Art Museum, and $50,000 that
No, not the Art Museum. It goes to SAPAC.
And $50,000 that goes to the fort. All of those things are there, and I know that they're integral to the visitors that come to San Angelo, but if they need to understand exactly where that money is.
Mayor, one
Yes,
of the
Rick.
things that I heard at the Civic Events Board when they talked about it was, while they were, not opposed necessarily one way or the other, I think possibly when we did the CVB years ago, the CVB reviewed it, the board reviewed it, and they were able to, sort of give a recommendation on what they thought it would take to fund their operations. And we've brought that forward from a staff perspective, but I think the Civic Events Board had concerns about when we set that dollar amount, there are other things that we may want to consider that, really what does it cost to maintain the facilities like they should be maintained? And so should additional dollars be considered in there? Now, there's other ways of doing that, like y'all have done in the past, where Sid brings forward a proposal and you allocate additional dollars. So I think that's what they were hoping to sort of muddle through.
I think the conversation has to sort of go down this road, and that is, number one, what part, and they are good at putting on events, that Civic Events puts on and brings good things to the city. Then there's the conversation called maintenance and facilities and improvements to those facilities. And no one can be successful in their efforts of bringing people to town if our facilities are not adequate.
That's right.
And so we must make sure that what we don't do is just put out all of this money and then continue to allow our facilities to denigrate and not be the quality facility to put on quality events. So I want to make sure at the end of the day that there's monies to take care of the facilities of which all these organizations, particularly civic events and the facilities that are city-owned and have to be city-managed, aren't supported. And so I don't want frivolous money put towards things that don't bring a lot to the table, but they do bring negative impact to the facilities.
Mayor?
Yes,
Mayor,
Billy.
You know, I think the statement was made a little bit earlier that we didn't want anyone to be punished by using a specific dollar amount or a percentage amount. Well, if I look at the slide that's up now, it looks like the civic events fund allocation is being punished to the tune of over 100 grand. And I think that, I believe Sid made a presentation to us sometime in the past about the need for improved facilities. He needed a new stage, there was a new roof, there was new chairs for the, you know, river stage, things like that. And to the mayor's point, I think, you know, maintenance of our facilities is very, very important. So if I look at this slide, then I would be inclined to say the percentage of the hot tax fund is more beneficial than the specific dollar amount.
Right.
And I think to that, what I would say, Billy, you're correct. If you, is that 136 from the 2018 budget?
So what I have here on this slide is the original budget for fiscal year 19 was just over $1 million, the $1,076,000, and that was just based on 48% of what we budgeted as revenue in the hot fund.
But we had a very, very good 2018. And so that is reflective of not against the civic events. It's reflective of a strong economy and hotel rooms, some of which have been, and we need to talk through this, have been because of the good oil field industry, which is not civic events, but it is an issue relative to the economy. And the question mark is for those people who are staying in a hotel room over 30 days because they're under contract with a hotel for over 30 days, then they no longer pay the hot tax. So the fuller our hotels become with employees of corporations, the less money the hot tax fund takes in. So this allocation of money, although it's the proposed, because it's a percentage, if in fact the hotel tax fund continues to grow, which is what happened last year, there would not be that difference because it's a percentage. And if the hot tax fund grows, that number grows.
Right, and it could also go the other way. If the hot fund
Yes.
goes less, we could have trouble funding our operation of civic events.
And that's
based
my
on a 48%.
overall concern is, what are we doing to ensure that the monies are there to protect our facilities?
So we do have a mechanism in place, Mayor, for that. And as you know, Sid has brought to you a grouping of projects in the past. I think we funded it close to $500,000 worth either last year or the year before. And so we do have that mechanism in place if he does have projects that he needs to do where he can come and ask you for authorization to either use his fund balance in 410 or in the hot fund. And so that is the way we would address that in the future. I wanted to just tell you how I came up with the amount of $940,000 as a flat amount. Last year, their expenditure budget, without any of the other venue revenues or expenses, just from the hot budget that was funded was $930,886. And so we thought we'd start with $940,000 since it's the first year of a flat dollar amount to give them a little bit of cushion and to allow them to see how that budget works for them. As you also know, they can still come back with a budget amendment to you if they see that that amount is insufficient or if they do, again, have projects that come up that need to be completed.
There's no limitation here. This is just the budget of which any progress in hot tax would benefit. They would benefit. Within the budget, the civic events budget, is there a percentage or a dollar amount that is budgeted in their budget to maintain facilities? Because that's a key question.
I don't know if I have what their original budget is for this year, but last year it was skewed because, again, they had that $500-ish thousand that council did approve for them to do projects. So in their capital line, it's a little skewed, but let me see if I can find their original budget for this year.
Harry, I think you have a question while we're looking. Yeah.
While we're looking at that, if you will go back a little bit in history, there was at one time 48% for the civic events plus, I believe, 3% that was to maintain the facilities. That was at the same time that there was a percentage to the Cultural Affairs and also to the Convention and Visitors Bureau. Now, I don't know whether that changed, that percentage changed, or we combined them somehow or other when we made the change to a dollar amount to the civic events about 7 or 8 years ago. But the bottom line is that used to have a separate fund.
I believe we have a lot more questions and a lot more information we need before we make any final decisions, because I think this conversation is important to the city. It's important to the health of the quality of life, and making sure we continue to bring people to town to support this economy. And I don't think we have all the information we need today to do that. But I think what you're asking us simply to do today is to allow the chambers, the CVB, to go to December 30th instead of or the 31st instead of September 30th. So along the way, we can continue to look at more numbers, allocations, and have a conversation about direction going forward.
Okay, that sounds good.
That way their board can come up with any kind of repercussions.
Yes.
And, you know, to Harry's point of all being on a percentage or all being a dollar amount, I too would like to hear from the organizations that are getting these hot funds so that, you know, they can make their case for percentage versus specific dollar amount.
One of the reasons why it gets complicated when you go to dollars only, not percentages, is if in fact you have a tough year and your hot tax funds are under, you've already allocated dollars to all the organizations, which will be short of what's coming in for revenue. And so the percentage protects you from up or down in the hot tax funds. So
I would say if we make it all equal, I would be in favor of a percentage based across the board.
So we need to look at a big picture of a lot of things. I think there's some other organizations that want to have a conversation with us. So for right now, I need the motion Daniel.
The way it's actually written in here, Teresa, we need your input on this. So how do we move forward with this?
The motion needs to amend the resolution, deleting any provisions related to the allocation of funding for civic events, so that we're only approving the portion that's the contract.
I would make that motion.
So that is the motion. And is there a second? Second. With Lucy second. Is there any public comment?
Good morning.
Good morning.
Steve Mahaffey, current chair of the Civic Events Board. And I do appreciate all the questions and thoughts that came up today, because we had those exact same questions. There's a lot of history with this hot funding. Harry, I'm glad you made that comment, because it used to be all percentage based. And there were one-time projects that came to be that then the allocation was a flat time fee. And so through the years, we continued doing flat fee allocations. So I am truly in favor, not on behalf of the board, but personally in favor of the percentage base, because it is self-regulating. You know, if you review the tax code 351, it is all percentage based, and it is that way to self-regulate. I'll bring the arts, for instance. You were only required to give 15% to the arts. So if you have an extremely down year and you are contractually obligated to give flat fees to these certain individuals, what are you going to do? You could be in, violation of the actual tax code, because it's not being regulated on percentage based. So again, we would appreciate the motion to table this item so we can have further discussion. I will say, Mayor, you made a great, strong comment a few months back that we have boards for a reason. And we want to bring relevance to those boards and allow these boards to discuss and vet this information for you guys, and bring a good, amount of information for you guys to discuss, to vote on. So I appreciate that. Is there any questions?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any further public comment? With no further public comment, we will take a vote. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 7-0. We will now move into closed session. Teresa, how long do you think we'll be in closed session?
I think we have 2 items that could take a little bit of time, so I would think maybe an hour to an hour and a half.
We'll be in closed session for an hour and a half, which means we are adjourning at 10:06, so we will be back at 11:30 to finish the meeting. Open Government, Chapter 551, open meetings, subchapter D, exceptions to requirement that meetings be open under the following sections. A, Section 551.0712, consult with attorney when the governmental body seeks the advice of its attorney on a matter in which the duty of the attorney to the governmental body under the Texas disciplinary rules of professional conduct of the State Bar of Texas clearly conflicts with this chapter regarding the solid waste contract. And B, Section 551.0711A, consult with attorney when the governmental body seeks the advice of its attorney about pending or contemplated litigation regarding CLEAT and TMPA. Section 551.072, deliberation regarding real property. A governmental body may conduct a closed meeting to deliberate the purchase, exchange, lease, or value of real property if deliberation in an open meeting would have a detrimental effect on the position of the governmental body in negotiations with a third person. Reference 16.36 acres, P. Kuzenacker, S-0647, A-1566. There we go. Kuzenacker. 721. There's nothing to announce from our closed session, so we will now go to announcements and consideration of future agenda items. Are there any?
No, but I would just like to remind everyone to go vote.
Vote. Go vote, Lucy says. With that, do I have a motion for adjournment?
Move to adjourn.
And a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 7-0. This city council meeting is officially over at 11:22 a.m.